in the stand, sir. Commission Counsel, are you ready? Well,
Yes, please, sir.
right now, I think Mr. Scotland, you are ready?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman, I am.
All right, I think we can go then.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, we were at a point, Mr. Gates, where we were looking at the police and the investigation into the incident of the night of the 13th of June, 1980, yes?
Yes, sir.
And I was asking you then, well, no, I was a serving member then, about certain key operatives, one being Leslie Stafford, and we had reached now Ignatius McRae.
Yes, sir.
Now, the learned chairman raised a very important issue because I asked you, look, whether or not Mr. Cecil Skip Roberts was the person in charge of the investigation. The chairman said, well, no, he's deputy commissioner very high up. Would that be the norm? You recall that?
Yes, sir.
So with this where we are at now, Mr. Chairman, may I respectfully ask that the witness be shown LJCIDGS1 and thankfully pointed out at page 45 by Madam Commissioner, lines 10 counting from the bottom, page 45. Counting from the bottom. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And that document, forgetting the tag for a moment, is what?
That document would be the preliminary inquiry into the death of Walter Rodney, dated the 4th of January, 1996. Do you see the document? Do you see the page I'm speaking to you about, sir?
Page 34.
Page 45. I was asking you about Ignatius McRae. 45 in the top right hand. Help him, please. You see 45 in the top right hand corner?
Yes, sir.
Okay, follow with me, please. Under the heading, questions by Mr. Dunat Singh SC. You see that?
Yes, sir.
No, I haven't reached that document as yet. I'm dealing with the ones that the commissioner has first before I go into the other document. No, it's their document. Commissioner of Police, yeah, coroner's office. Wait, hold on. Let me just check it. Mr. Chairman, to correct it, I'm grateful to my learned friend. The document seems to be the coroner's inquest into the death of Walter Rodney.
As opposed to the preliminary inquiry.
As opposed to the preliminary inquiry. It's not named, but I'm grateful to my learned friend for the correct name. May I continue?
Certainly you may.
Sir, do you see Mr. McRae? At the time of the incident, what was your rank? You see that?
Yes, sir.
And then he said ASP.
Yes, sir.
That's Assistant Superintendent, ASP.
Yes, sir.
You were stationed where? CID, Headquarters, Georgetown. Question. The investigation into the death of Dr. Walter Rodney was done by CID Headquarters? Answer. Yes, sir. You see that there?
Yes, sir.
Question. The overall investigation was in the hands of Skip Roberts, of Mr. Skip Roberts? Answer.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Question. You were a senior member of the investigating team? Answer. Yes, sir. In the course of the investigation, Donald Rodney gave a statement? Answer, yes, sir, to me. Turn over page. In the statement, Donald Rodney stated that Dr. Rodney was murdered. Answer, I cannot now remember the contents of the statement. And then it goes, do you remember Donald Rodney was charged for possession of explosives? The answer, yes, sir. You see that there?
Yes, sir.
So let us go about 5 lines lower down on page 46. I just want to cover this area. Question. In the statement, Donald Rodney said the device which exploded was given to him by one Gregory Smith. You see that there?
Yes, sir.
And what was the answer?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Gates, I'm now putting this evidence in the context of your evidence before this commission, that Donald Rodney has said to Inspector ASP McRae that the device that exploded was given to him by Gregory Smith. Correct?
Yes, sir.
I will go into some more detail with that with you a little later. But does that not strike you with the conversation you had with Gregory Smith in March 1980?
Sure does.
It sure does. Thank you. We will go into some more detail presently. So we have left off now that Donald Rodney was charged with the possession of explosives. You see that? Mr. Chairman, does the commission now have a copy of the
I think that is correct. The preliminary inquiry?
where Rodney was charged, Donald Rodney was charged with possession of explosive.
Yes.
Right. It was one of those hybrid where it was dealt with summarily. May I respectfully ask, Chairman, that the commission turns to page 2 of that document.
Yes. Page
The
2.
page, it's number 2 at the top. I understand Mr. Williams thinks it's page 8, but it's number 2 at the top, under the rubric cross-examination by Mr. Dudnat Singh.
That might well be when he's finished.
I'm not remembering. Still?
Yes, get ahead.
Right. Could the witness be shown that document, please? Sir, could you bring it? I can just save time. Point him here. I was not in charge. Now, sir, I have presented to you another document, which is the official notes of the preliminary inquiry that charge Donald Rodney with possession of explosives. Now, at page, I have shown you a line, and this is Mr. Dudnat Singh.
I don't think this is the preliminary inquiry, because if you look at the bottom of that first page, it says defendant is sentenced to 18 months.
What happened is that he elected for it to be done summarily.
Try it smart.
So it's a trial. It's really the trial of Donald Rodney.
Yeah.
Yes?
Justice.
So it's properly the trial of Donald Rodney.
I just want to clarify something, and
Yes.
perhaps Mr. Williams can assist, because Counsel Mr. Scotland used the words he elected. But I remember reading somewhere that it was quite controversial, and that it was, is it really the defense's election, or the law was simply changed to make it into the choice of the state prosecution?
It is the courts. The courts must make that determination as to whether they will go summarily or whether they will be a PI under the Administration of Justice Act. But
you.
representations could be made by both sides.
Thank you. And I
But the
believe in
final,
this
discretion is
case,
in court.
there was some challenge, or in one of the cases that has been brought to our attention, there was some challenge to proceeding summarily. I'm not sure it is the Donald Rodney matter or some other matter, but apparently it was a bit controversial when it was brought into effect those many years ago.
That might have been the arson trial. if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
it may have been that, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Jeez. Now, under cross-examination by Ignatius McRae, you see,
You're no longer at page 2 then.
I am at page 2, cross-examination by Mr. Dudnath is of Ignatius McRae. It starts at page 1, but page 2 is the cross. And let me just take you before we go to the direct line, 2 lines up. You see, in respect, I cannot say if all means at the disposal of the police was used to get into contact with Gregory Smith. You see that there?
Yes, sir.
Just 2 lines up, page 2 in the middle. You see that there?
Yes, sir.
When I went to medical arts, I told Donald Rodney I was investigating the death of his brother, Walter Rodney. You see that?
Yes, sir.
I read the next line for me, please.
I was not in charge of the investigations. I was under the control and supervision of Deputy Commissioner of Crime, Chief Roberts.
When you say Deputy Commissioner of Crime, Chief Roberts, you're referring to Cecil Skip Roberts, correct?
Yes, sir.
Or it's referred to Cecil Skip Roberts.
Yes,
So, Ignatius McRae is telling us for posterity that he was not the one in charge of this investigation. He was under the control and the supervision, correct?
Yeah. I
Of
was
Chief Roberts.
and direction.
And direction of Chief Roberts. Now, therefore, sir, it is not, in fact, it is a fact, it's not far-fetched, it's a fact that in this investigation, Cecil Skip Roberts was calling the shots.
It's clear, it's crystal.
And even though a very high-ranking officer, ASP McRae, was involved, he was under the direction of Cecil Skip Roberts.
There's no doubt.
And it would be true to say then that even though Leslie Stafford would have been the charging officer, he would have been acting on ultimate instructions coming from Skip Roberts.
That's right.
So much so that even the statement that Donald Rodney gave had to be handed over to Cecil Skip Roberts for him to review.
Well, that's normal. The standard operating procedure as it relates to certain type of investigations involving certain people.
So then, would you conclude as a serving member then that there was a very hands-on approach by the hierarchy of the police service in 1980 relative to at least the involvement, the charging of Donald Rodney for the possession of explosives? That investigation.
Yes.
Deputy.
All the information I have suggests so.
No, but I'm going no. Mr.
Mr. Chairman, how could he know that? He has been shown Ignatius McRae's evidence. He has to interpret that, but he cannot say of his own knowledge because there's no evidence of that. That he could go upstairs to where Skip Roberts' office was and talk to him like that about anything.
Mr. Chairman, my
But
response.
Is that what he said here just now?
He has to interpret this. That's what my learning friend is asking to do, not of his own knowledge. He has to say his understanding of this is that it was like that, but he cannot tell us that that was so because he doesn't know. He didn't have the level to know that.
Well, I've heard this talk about the level to know. Sometimes a child sits in at the meeting with his father. The highest men are discussing serious things, the child is there.
But,
So,
Mr. Chairman,
don't speak with some certainty about these matters. You can probe him about how he get to know what he claimed to know. But in the real world, all sorts of things happen.
Mr. Chairman, with respect, this is not any child with the father. This is someone we have shown him the evidence where the witness himself says, I was under the control and supervision and called the name. This witness was involved as an operative in some way, so he would have been intimately aware at the time of what is going on.
I think all you need to do is get on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
All you need to
Sir,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it might be wise for us to try and take judicial notice of this trial proceedings so that we can put an exhibit number on it, so that when it's being referred to, it's easier.
Mr. Chairman, I will ask that it be marked X for identification. Donald Rodney will be coming, and he will put his document that is very germane to his life into evidence before this commission. Could it be marked X for identification? The trial of Donald Rodney?
But you're referring to it repeatedly. You sure that you don't want to have it entered into evidence as early as now?
I feel that Donald Rodney would want to put this document in for himself. That's why I have the original here. He feels very...
You call it his document?
Well, this is his life. Yeah, he calls it his document, not me. It's a public document. It's really up to you, Chair. You conduct your proceedings. If you want it in through him,
I think that is being referred to, and at this point it should be in.
then so be it.
All right.
So then may I ask that this document be marked A,
Which document? You want to spell out what the document?
yes, RG, is it? RG4.
Yes, you're talking about the tag is RG4, but what document?
It is the trial,
Millions of people are listening to this, you know.
the trial of Donald Rodney in between June 1980 and February 1982.
ARG4.
RG, no, it was RG, I think.
Is we had marked the others AR.
ARG4?
The document reflected the trial of Donald Rodney in 1982. You gave the years 1982?
Yes, please, 1980 to 1982. For the offense of possession of explosive without lawful authority.
All right, it is received into evidence and marked. Give me the tag again.
ARG4.
ARG4. So receive a tag.
Much obliged, Mr. Chairman. May I continue? Now, Mr. Gates.
For completeness, bearing in mind, I'm having a...
Too many mics are on.
For completeness, bearing in mind the section of the document you had put to the witness,
Yes.
perhaps you may want to refer to the next page, page 3, which coincides with what you read from the coroner's inquest at the bottom, third, where it says after taking Rodney's statements, etc. And then short, on one occasion, Mr. Roberts called, two sentences below that. Perhaps just for completeness that we have it all together.
Now, sir, remember, I'm very brief with you, Madam Commissioner. Remember, we were discussing, I had asked you that even the statement given by Donald Rodney had to be given to Deputy Commissioner Crime, Skip Roberts. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
May I take your attention to page 3 of the same document? Just turn it over. Page, the last paragraph after taking Rodney's statement. You see it there?
Yes, sir.
Could you read that into the record for me, please?
I handed it to Deputy
No. Start from the beginning of the paragraph. Where are you reading? I handed it to Deputy Commissioner.
Reading, he was continuing.
No. Start from the start of the paragraph, sir. Yeah. After taking
Rodney's statement, I handed it to Deputy Commissioner of Crime, Skip Roberts.
Keep going.
I cannot remember hearing the name of Gwen Melville, 48159 Tocqueville, during the course of the investigations.
Yes.
If Gwendolyn lived at Russell Street, she would have been interrogated. I do not know if Melville was ever interrogated. One occasion, Mr. Roberts called all the members of the investigating team for consultation. I cannot remember that my advertisements was
That
placed,
any- that
that
any.
any advertisements was placed in the papers to contact this Gregory Smith. There was a photograph of Mr. Smith. To my knowledge, that photograph was not published in the Guyana Chronicle. I assume that the photographs were submitted to the various police stations.
Thank you very much. Now, let's go back now to my question to you. From this record that you have just read, Mr. Roberts took a hands-on approach in the investigation leading to the charge of Donald Rodney for possession of explosives.
Of course he did.
So it means then that we can conclude, and rightly so, we're not casting any aspersions, that there was involvement in the highest level of the police force into the charge of Donald Rodney for possession of explosives.
In my humble opinion, that is so.
Good. Now remember, I started by asking you about reference number 4, which I read to you earlier on, in terms of reference number 4, and the involvement of the various arms of defense in Guyana between 1978 to December 1980. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
Let us continue with the police force between 1979 and 1980. Pre-1980, when you were a member of the police force,
Yes, sir.
you would agree that the police force, according to you, had a death squad.
Yes, sir.
And that death squad was subdivided into a branch called the execution branch.
Not officially, but
That's what they call themselves.
Yeah,
Yes, the execution
yeah,
branch.
there were 4 men in that unit.
And the execution branch purpose, of the execution branch was a branch which killed persons.
Yes, sir.
And when you say kill persons, you mean citizens of Guyana. Yes?
Many.
Including members of political parties,
Yeah.
opposition members.
Dublin and Ohini Kwama comes to mind.
Sorry, I'm not hearing.
Dublin and
Ohini Kwama.
Ogwimi Kwama.
Kwama.
And which party were they affiliated with?
The Working People's Alliance.
The WPA?
Yes, sir.
I think you're going fast. That second name,
Dublin.
no, Dublin and
Ohini Kwama.
Could you read?
you have it. I think you may spell it.
O-H-E-N-E?
Yes, spell both
OHEA.
names to me, please.
Ohene, I think it's, I might not be correct. Koama, maybe wrong.
And I don't want to rehash, I just want to make sure we get it fully. Dublin had a full name, or you just knew him as
No, he had a full name, but I can't recall his first
Ernest?
name.
Was it Ernest? Mr. Williams, could you help us? Was it
Edward
Edward or
Dublin, I
Ernest?
think, yeah.
No, but you have your witness.
Oh, I thought you were normally so.
Your witness is given names. Right?
Edward Dublin?
Yes.
Edward Dublin, yeah.
And they were both members of the WPA.
Yes, sir.
And you were telling this commission that they were killed by the execution branch of the death squad.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us, as far as you know, between 1979 and 1980, how many persons were killed by this squad?
From my recollection, it might be about 25 to 30.
Between what period?
Between 1977 and 1980.
I don't know if you will explore it further or if other council will, but the mere fact that persons are killed by the police doesn't tell us anything in terms of operations. In fact, there are police killings which are entirely justified.
I am
So,
actually
I
going
don't-
into that area now. Now, you have said, sir, that between 1977 and 1980, and to be fair to you, maybe I should not stray, it's the 1st of January 1978 is the terms of reference. So let me rephrase my question and go from January 1978 to December 1980. Would it still be true that there's around 30 persons?
25 to 30.
And these persons, were they killed? How would you describe their killing? Was it justified killing by this death squad?
I would say about half of that was justified.
Were you not a member of this branch?
Yes, sir.
Good. Therefore, could you tell us the other half, the half that wasn't justified?
When you say whether he a member of that, you mean whether he was a member of the death squad?
Were you not a member of
Yes,
this
sir.
squad? Yes?
Yes, sir.
So the other half that you speak about, the other 12 or so, what type of killings were those?
I would say extrajudicial.
And were they justified in the normal course of the police's mandate to protect and serve?
No, sir.
And out of these 12, how many persons were opposition members or political activists?
I can only recall two.
And that is the two that you've just referred
Yes,
to?
sir.
Thank you. Who would have ordered, as far as you know, who would have ordered those killings?
Okay, this special squad, which was later known as the death squad, even though we had an officer by the name of Officer Ulrich London, that unit took instructions directly from Mr. Roberts as it relates to certain
So-
activities.
So your testimony
Yes, sir.
is, as far as you know, the order came from then Deputy Commissioner Cecil Skip Roberts?
Yeah, because he would give direct instructions to Sergeant Andrews, known as the agent.
So that is the first squad that we speak of, the execution squad. You also spoke of a second unit.
The patrol unit.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
before you go on to that, I really interest of keeping it together. Can this witness tell us what were the circumstances in which Edward Dublin and Ohini Kwana were killed? Why are you saying these were extrajudicial and not justified?
Because I am aware that they were under surveillance for a particular period, after which they were cornered and shot by Sergeant Andrews, 8755 Andrews, and 8005 Coffee.
So you are telling this commission that they were firstly under surveillance, and then leading to this surveillance, they were cornered, so to speak, and executed?
Yes, sir.
And what would have been behind those executions, as far as you know?
There were intelligence out there that they were accumulating arms and ammunition for the purpose of overthrowing the government of Guyana. How true that was, I can only say to a certain point. They were under surveillance and they were cornered.
And they were cornered and
Yeah.
killed.
I still would like to, if I can, get some more detail here or a better understanding. Was there ever an unofficial report or reason given as to the circumstances under which they met their death? Was there ever an inquiry?
I can't recall an inquiry. I can recall that they said they had arms and ammunition in a vehicle. We come and they attacked the police or something, which is normal for the police to say.
So why do you say in their particular cases, these allegations were false?
You say you don't know how true.
I don't know how true, but I know
You say it's normal.
I know in my days we would walk around with 2 extra weapons. So if a man is shot, you plant it on him.
I see.
You attack the police, or you always have cutlasses.
I see. Thank you.
You have any reason to believe that that has changed?
No, it hasn't.
I learned that in Barbados from a civilian. My former landlord, when I was a student, he had 2 pieces. And I said, what are those 2 pieces for? He said, one for me and one for the bandit.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Commissioner, may I continue? I would like to go now, I've probed you relative to the death squad. Let us go to the second squad, the intelligence unit.
Yes, sir.
Now, you are saying to this commission that between 1979 and 1980, there was a section of the police service involved in intelligence.
A section within the special squad.
Within the special squad, involved in intelligence gathering, yes?
Yes, sir.
No, there's nothing wrong with intelligence gathering.
No, sir.
But this unit within the unit was involved in gathering information against political parties.
Yes, sir. We done started off doing that.
But it evolved into that.
Yes, sir.
And it will be true to say that that heightened between 1978 and 1980 with the advent and, of course, the gathering of momentum with the WPA and Dr. Rodney.
Yes, sir.
The WPA was seen as a group of interest.
They were also seen as a threat.
As a threat to the powers that be?
Yes, sir.
When you say the powers that be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth with this question, what do
There
you
was no
mean?
doubt they were a threat to the PNC administration.
Those are your words.
Yes, sir.
So you are telling this commission that the WPA was seen as a threat to the PNC administration. Would it be true to say then that functionaries, members of that party, would then be seen as threat because the WPA is made up of members?
Yes, sir.
So would it be true to say then that they would be seen, the members would be seen as threats
Yes,
to the
sir.
PNC?
Yes, sir. Certain members.
And also, would it be true to say, I'm going back to my client, that Donald Rodney, being the brother of Dr. Rodney, would also be associated with that threat? Would that be far-fetched?
No, sir. It's obvious.
Who would have deemed the WPA a threat to the PNC? A threat doesn't just come up overnight.
Well, the various intelligence agencies having compiled and submitted their reports to the various heads of intelligence.
Who would that be? Would it be true to say then that that would be submitted to national security
So you're not giving him a chance to answer fully.
So, sorry.
I think you did interrupt me.
That would have been submitted to Mr. Larry Lewis, who would have been the head of Joint Service Intelligence.
Yes.
I understand that he, from time to time, would collect information from a number of other intelligence agencies operating in the country.
And would that stay within the bosom of Laurie Lewis, or would it be transmitted elsewhere?
No, sir. It is common knowledge that Larry Lewis and Skip Roberts reported directly to President Barnum or Prime Minister Barnum. They never reported to the Commissioner of Police. The Commissioner of Police at the time reported to the Minister of Affairs. Skip Roberts and Larry Lewis reported directly.
To whom?
Mr. Barnum.
So we are now at the stage that a group has been identified as a threat. Would it be true to say that after that stage, the police, via this squad, or this branch of the squad?
Forgive me, but I'm trying to follow you as clearly as I can.
Yes.
You asked an important question now. Who would have made the determination that he was a threat? Say certain members were seen as threats to the PNC. Donald Rodney, as a brother of Walter,
Yes.
was seen as a threat. And then you asked him this question. Who would have classified them as threats? And he said various intelligence agencies haven't submitted their report to Skip Roberts and
Laurie
Lewis. And they would have reported directly to Mr. Burnham. But does that answer the question?
I don't think
You're
it does,
just
Mr.
rushing
Chairman.
ahead.
I'm grateful.
Go
Sir,
go step by step.
thank you.
Give the witness an opportunity to answer the question fully.
So
If he can.
we be taking it slowly. Who
Okay,
would
sir.
have determined that these persons, that group would have been a threat? Where would that determination come from?
I would say the top.
What is the top? Who is the top?
Well, if Mr. Lewis and Mr. Larry Lewis is reporting directly to Mr. Barnum, they would have had some kind of meeting and they would have determined that.
So your answer to this commission would be that Laurie Lewis, Skip Roberts, and then Prime Minister, the Honorable Forbes Burnham, would have determined who were the threats.
Yeah, obviously.
Yes, what? And then you don't eat your words.
Obviously.
May I ask? These reports from these various intelligence reports which were submitted to these two officers that you have referred to, was there ever a summary or any discussion or any points extracted from these reports which was discussed with you by either Laurie Lewis or Skip Roberts?
From time to time, they may discuss it. Sometimes they just make decisions that
No,
pass down
but they did
instructions.
from time to time
From time
discuss
to
it
time.
with you. And further to these meetings you say they had with the then President Burnham, would they also have meetings and discussions with you? That is Skip Roberts or Laurie?
Yeah, from time to time.
From time to time.
I have never met Mr. Barnum.
No,
I've
I'm
never-
saying after they met with
Yeah.
the then President, would they also meet with you?
Yes.
So what was the source of your information or the conclusion that you came to that they were regarded as threats?
That never really came from me. It came from other agencies, and I was asked to do a double check.
Who brought that to your
Mr.
attention
Larry
and
Lewis.
asked you to
Mr.
double
Larry
check?
Lewis, because there were several, there were
No, it's
intelligence
okay.
agencies.
I just want to know who
counterintelligence.
brought it to your attention. Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. Gates, I understand that you have a wealth of information, but sometimes when I ask the question, I ask you a specific question. And before you expand, I would just like you maybe just to answer my question and then you could go on.
Okay, sir.
Follow? So you are saying to this commission that you would have gotten the answer that you gave to us, you'd have gotten that from your personal interaction with Laurie Lewis
Yes, sir.
at the time.
Yes, sir.
Now we are at the stage where a group has been identified as a threat to, in your words, the PNC.
Yes, sir.
the next step, would it be true to say then that the next step would be that the police will plant their moles to infiltrate these bodies?
Yes, sir.
And it would be true to say that just not the police, I'm coming to the army, but the police and the army, as you well learned thereafter.
Yes, sir.
They what, locked up?
No, as he learned thereafter, that just not the police will plant moles to infiltrate the army. Now, and this will be, I just want to get it clear, the infiltration of legitimate political parties operating in Guyana between 1979 and 1980.
Yes, sir.
Council, just for my own benefit, the same persons regarded as suspects and who attracted moles by the police, those same persons would also attract moles by the army?
Yes, please. Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
But he wasn't in the army, how would he know that?
And he was a member of the army.
Yes, he did. There was no
So,
question about it.
sir, so my little advice to you as you go along in the boxes, but think before you answer, because you've answered the question already. You know because you spoke to Gregory Smith, who was a mole of the army. Isn't that so?
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
that's
So that is how you've been able to answer the question. That is just not the police, which you were a member of, and an infiltrator, but the army, who Gregory Smith was a member of, and he was an infiltrator.
Yes, sir.
And just to tie up the area raised by the chairman of the commission, I had asked you about bodies, meaning agencies or organizations, but those bodies would translate themselves into literal persons because they would be the membership of those organizations.
Yes, sir.
And they would form themselves, or they would materialize into persons like Dr. Rupnarayan, Dr. Rodney, and others. Isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
May I?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Now, this infiltration, it is true to say, according to you, did not just take the form of personal infiltration, but it involved the planting of devices in cars, home, well, you said in cars,
Cars and office.
and offices of members of these political parties.
Yes, sir.
Qualified devices there, or simply
Devices, when I say devices,
Listening devices.
listening devices. I'm coming to other devices soon. But we'll deal with listening devices. And these will be devices whereby there can be eavesdropping
Yes, sir.
on conversations by those persons.
Yes, sir.
You have knowledge of at least one of these which was placed by you
In Dr. Rupnarayan's car.
in Dr. Rup. So you, in fact, you have first-hand knowledge.
Yes, sir.
You don't mean to gild the lily, but you placed those two devices.
Yes, sir, I did.
And these two devices were not given to you by any ordinary Guyanese Joe. This was given to you by someone who you call Brezhnev,
Former KGB officer.
a former KGB officer.
You know, in that world, perhaps we should say, he said he was a former KGB
Yes,
officer.
that will be correct to say.
According to you, that is what he said.
Yes.
But let us explore this for a moment, this former KGB officer. Sometimes, because I learn with my learned friend, Mr. Pilgrim, I pick up a Bajan accent. When you spoke to Mr. Brezhnev, did you pick up an accent? I'm just trying to, did you pick up, did he speak English fluently? You spoke to him, didn't you?
Yeah, he speak fairly fluent, but with a little, you know.
Was he Describe him for us. Was he a Caucasian? Was he?
Yeah, he was white, about 6'2", 6'3",
Yes.
very muscular.
Yes.
He had every cut of a former army officer.
He had the cut of a former army officer. And did he speak with an accent? That's the question.
Yes, he did speak with an accent.
So from your interaction with him, you would have formed your conclusion that he was a former KGB officer.
Yes, and very knowledgeable.
Very knowledgeable in the areas that he claimed to be.
Yes, sir.
He actually gave you those two devices to place on the car.
Yes, sir.
Describe those devices for this commission.
They were like
You,
this.
you have to show the commission so we can get dimensions.
They were about this size.
Would that be 3-5 centimeters?
Yeah, wrong.
Wrong.
At the back of the device, it was magnetic, so you could have just placed it on us, on any metal contact.
We had that evidence already. And where did you place it in the car?
One under Dr. O'Brien's seat,
Yes, and the other?
and the other one in the conference area of the WPA's office.
From your continued surveillance, did you form the conclusion that those devices were doing the job that they were put there for?
Yes, because Mr. Brezhnev told me that he's receiving sound intelligence. It's clear.
Could
that
you
they were-
tell us where would be the homing, where would have been the headquarters, the area where the information was being gathered?
The Pegasus Hotel.
Excuse me?
The Pegasus Hotel.
Give us the room number. The Pegasus Hotel.
That's where he was based.
That is causing some anxiety for those of us in the Pegasus.
Back to the prince. Mr. William, go back to the princess. And
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if those things are still happening today. You should tell us.
No, it's not
that is a
happening
little
today.
comforting. That is a little comforting.
now, so these devices, well, you are telling us that you would have placed one in the car and the other one
In the
in the
conference
conference room of the WPA,
Yes,
the political headquarters of that party.
yes, sir.
And your go-between person was a police officer, serving police officer in the form of Mr. Chichester, who you call Chico.
Yes, sir.
And
Was Chester only a first name?
Chichester, what was his first?
I don't know his
Call him as
first name.
Chichester, Mr.
Chichester was the surname.
What's his? You don't know what his first name was?
No. In the police force, we refer to persons by their surname, unless you have a
Was it
person.
Inspector Henry Chester?
Inspector Henry Chester is a different person.
To Chichester?
Yeah.
Well, I thought so. And this Mr. Chichester would also provide you with funds in order for you to pay informants.
Yes, sir.
And that would be outside of the normal exchequer public service funds, isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
Where, as far as you know, could you help us, was Mr. Chichester getting those extra funds to give to you to pay the informants?
I did ask, and he said it came through the Ministry of National Development.
The Ministry of?
National Development.
Wow. So you asked him, where you getting this money
Yeah,
from?
I needed to know.
Now, apart from that, you were paid, apart from your police salary, you were given what I term it a bonus, but you were given additional money to conduct your infiltration exercise. as
Yes,
paid.
sir. Yes, sir.
That money would have come from outside of the normal public service structure. Or were you paid with a check from the public service?
No, I was paid in cash.
Therefore, would you conclude that that money came outside normal public service paid you in cash or with a check? Your monthly check as a policeman? Oh, no,
No,
sorry.
I never got a check as a policeman. I got a pay envelope with the liquid cash.
Okay. And when you collected money from Mr. Chichester, was that in the police envelope or was that aside?
No, not in the police envelope. I never signed for it.
Mr. Spartan, 1 minute. Mr. Gates, why you needed to know the source of the monies?
Why?
Why you needed to know? Why did you ask him where he was getting his money from?
Because I wanted to ensure that I was working for a legitimate organization. I don't want to know it's some mafia something. So I asked him, where is this money coming from?
But he was your superior officer, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
And would in those days, would a junior be permitted to ask a senior officer such a question?
Yes, because we developed a very close relationship, if you want to put it that way. You know, I was free to ask questions because he told me if I'm in doubt, if I needed answers, ask. You know, because I won't be able to function effectively if I have doubts.
And did you ask him in relation to your extra cash that Mr. Scotland just asked you about? Did you ask him about that as well?
The extra cash?
Your
The extra
salary?
monies that you were getting?
No, the salaries came in an envelope.
No,
That's
that
your
is-
official pay?
Yes, sir.
As I understand your evidence, you got monies over and above what a constable
Yes, sir.
earned.
Yes, sir.
Did you ask him about that as well?
Yeah, that came from, there was some arrangement, some special arrangement with the police finance office. Because my salary at the time was that of a superintendent, even though I was a constable. And probably they propped it up with allowances. I don't know how they did it.
But may I ask you this question? As far as you are able to tell us, did the police get extra monies whilst you were a serving member, you know, over and above its recurrent expenditure for other operations and so on?
The intelligence agencies would.
Okay.
May I then follow up from Commissioner Jairam's question? So then it would be true to say then that apart from your normal salary, you received these extra sums for the job that you were doing as an infiltrator.
Yes, sir.
And as far as you know, you have been inquired, that came from an official source.
Yes, sir.
Well, how much money we are talking about?
How much money?
Well, informers were paid based on the kind of intelligence they provided. It wasn't a fixed
How
something.
much were you paid?
Pardon me?
How much were you paid?
My official salary was $850.
You're talking at the level of superintendent, even though,
That was the superintendent's pay at the time, but my rank was constable.
yes, but you were paid $850 as a police.
Yes, sir.
Constable. How much were you paid then as an infiltrator?
Well, it's the same thing with the additional sums coming from, like Chichester said, the Ministry of National Development.
So you only got one check,
No check,
Oh, one
cash
cash.
in envelope.
and that was through the police finance office.
Yes, sir.
So then it would be, following up from the chairman, it would be true to say then that apart from sanctioning the infiltration, the police force at the time was paying for it.
Yes, sir.
And just capping off this area, so much so that at times your salary coming in would be delivered at home by Chico. He would deliver your salary at home to you.
I'll go that over, sir.
So much so that at times Mr. Chichester would deliver your salary at home.
Yes, I never went to the office to collect.
So apart from infiltration, you also got a letter of release from the police, but you were saying that this was a forged letter.
Yes, it was.
So,
Sorry, is it because of the letter of release why he never went to the office to collect?
No, because I was operating undercover. I was not supposed to be visiting police headquarters or police stations.
Because officially you were no longer a police officer,
I was still a police officer.
But no, you're
but
not listening.
operating undercover.
You were operating undercover, so in other words, what the commissioner is asking you is, you can't be seen going to collect your salary
No, I can't.
because you're operating undercover.
Yeah, that's
So you-
right.
And you got a forged letter of release.
Yes, sir.
False or, well, you said, is it forged or false? Good question.
I would say, in legal terms, I really, the letter wasn't genuine.
So it was false then?
It's false, yeah.
And in the true sense, then it was a forgery, but it wasn't a real letter of release.
No, but it was signed by,
Who signed it?
it was signed by, I can't remember who it was, Assistant Commissioner,
Wow.
Crime or something.
So, when it was a false letter, you mean in so far as it attempted to convey an impression which was false?
Yeah, it was false, but I was still on the payroll. I was still, but it's a false document.
But
I
it
was
said
still a
that
member.
it said in effect you were no longer a member before.
Yeah, that's what it said.
Mr. Chairman, it is a very legitimate question. Would the commission, if this evidence is believed, take it as a forge, a false, or both? It will help because in
Well,
the
I got the impression the falsity related to the content of the letter.
yes.
It says he was no longer a member before, so in truth and in fact, he continued to be.
So when it was presented or uttered, then it was,
For it to make sense, it had to be signed by a genuine living officer.
right.
But as the chairman said, the contents of it would have been false, giving the wrong impression that he was discharged, when in truth and in fact, he was still a serving
Still on
government.
the pay service. Thank you. So,
And this is borne out by what he told us, which is that he got his real letter of release
after
in
1981,
1981.
January.
Chairman, my dear, respectfully ask, why is it, you're saying that the content of the letter made it a false document? The content of the letter made it a false document. What in fact was the content of the letter? What did it say?
Mr. Chairman, with the greatest of respect, I know my learned friend will have a chance. If he wants to continue debating, I can retire hurt. I didn't intend to ask that question.
Yes, but don't be too strict because sometimes the matter is hot.
Yes.
And the commissioners themselves may interrupt to have a clarification. Sometimes you too may inquire. So if you can be of assistance.
I will be of assistance. Sir, what made the letter false?
Because the letter stated that I was released, my resignation was approved.
And it really wasn't.
It wasn't.
Thank you. So, we conclude this aspect of our engagement by saying that also between that period, 1979 and 80, the police force was engaged in giving false documents.
That would be true to say.
Thank you. Let us go to another area. Let us look at this person who you have described to us as Mr. Brezhnev.
Brezhnev, B-R-E-Z-N-E-V.
Brezhnev.
Yeah.
Now, this person was a consultant engaged by the Guyana police through then government of Guyana, isn't that so?
That's what he said.
I don't know, is that on the record?
Well, it's now on the record.
No, you put in something to him to suggest it existed on the record.
No, I'm not. I'm cross-examining him.
No, you haven't asked him. Mr. Chairman, could we confirm from the witness if he has said that before?
I understand, Mr. Williams, to be saying that your question is premised.
It is. That's why it's a leading question.
On the witness having said that before.
I have never.
Or somehow that is on the record as a fact.
Well, I say two things to that, Mr. Chairman. Sir, could he be shown his statement, please? Could the witness be shown his
I think
statement?
he has a statement, you just need to.
You have your statement with you?
Oh, yeah.
Look at page. page 2, after Georgetown Prison Camp, 23rd March, look at lines 4 counting from the bottom.
Page 2.
Page 2 of his statement. In the middle, Georgetown Prison Camp, 23rd March 2004. Look at lines 5 counting from the top for the whole sentence to be read into context.
I'm not sure that it might not have been the record, but mine came late. I got my transcript of last Friday late last night, and I didn't review it. But it might have been on the record before.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not being unfair to the witness.
Might have been, I'm not sure.
Yes, no, I have it in his sworn testimony. Mr. Chairman, I'm referring you directly, respectfully, to lines 5. The sentence starts with line 5, the white middle-aged male, in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
I'm not introducing anything that is alien.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to describe you as Mr. Speaker. But look, if we are lawyers, if my learned friend is going to pull a statement pull any line from a statement that is being tendered in evidence, he has to refer to the statement and say, well, look, in your statement you said so-so. Otherwise, he's suggesting it's on the record already. That's the point I'm making. I'm going to be using this a lot because a lot of things are not on the record, but it's in the statement. So therefore, he has to draw your attention to where he's sourcing his questions.
As I understand, that's already part of the record, though, and he's a cross-examiner.
He's one of ours.
That came in chief.
But that's the question I was asking.
Yes.
It did come in chief, Mr. Chairman, and I'm
Okay,
compelled.
but don't let's make too much of it.
No, I think, Mr. Scotland, for the sake of good order, it may be useful if you say, look at on page 2 of it, your witness statement, you said so and so, is that correct, and so on. However you choose.
Mr. Chairman, I and Commissioner Jeremy will do that, but I will hold my learned friend to that very high standard when he starts
of course.
with his roaming cross. May I continue? May I continue, please, Mr. Chairman? Sir, I am on your witness statement. You've oh, sorry. Use the umpire. The white middle-aged male, you see it there? Page 2 of your statement, right?
I was just hoping that council don't set too high standards to one another and then trip one another.
I'm not tripping. You see it there, sir?
Yes, sir.
Read it into the record for us, please. From the white middle-aged male.
The white middle-aged male introduced himself only as Brezhnev, who stated that he was a former KBG operative, now working as a consultant to the government of Guyana, and that he would advise me from time to time on the technical aspects of my operation.
Pause.
Just for the record, you read from Exhibit,
ARG3.
thank you.
And Exhibit ARG3, Mr. Gates, that is your witness statement in this matter.
Yes, sir.
And it's part of your examination in chief.
Yes, sir.
So, 2 things are said here, Mr. Gates. The person, he introduced himself to you. This is first-hand information that he's telling you, I am a former KGB operative.
Yes, sir.
So it's not second-hand information.
No, sir.
Also, he has said to you that he was working as a consultant to the government of Guyana.
Yes, he did.
Therefore, it will be true to say that the Guyana police...
But you see, that's why I made the objection just now. He said that he was working with the Guyana police force, and I know he did. That's not in his statement. The only thing in his statement is that he was a consultant to the government. So if he's trying to insert this now, he must say, I now say. That's the point I was making. That's the objection I was making.
He's drawing a conclusion which does not follow from the premise. That because he was a consultant, he was therefore working with the Guyana Police Force.
Mr. Chairman, if you would allow the question, you will see that the premise is very much
No, but I think you
appropriate.
would have to establish the premise before you try.
I will. Sir, you were a serving member of the Guyana Police Force.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Brezhnev was offering his services to you in technical areas, isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
Therefore, you as a serving member in the Guyana Police Force were being offered technical services from somebody who was a former KGB operative.
Yes, sir.
In those circumstances, isn't it true to conclude that the Guyana Police Force, through the then government of Guyana, had engaged a consultant, former KGB operative, who assisted you in technical areas?
Yes, sir.
No, I am not. This is evidence. Wait until he sees the address. This is just evidence, Mr. Chairman, as to the involvement of, as to clause 4 of the commission's terms of reference, which affects the interests who I represent, Donald Rodney.
He is drawing conclusions and you're putting to him what if he believes it, because the man might have told him an untruth too,
I will ask him that.
as to who employed him.
Sir, when you
Remember that all of them are operating in a dark arena of half-truths and no truths at all.
and agree. Did you believe Mr. Brezhnev when he told you that he was hired as a consultant by the government, the then government of Guyana?
I did believe him.
And did he not back up his words by giving you 2 devices to plant?
Yes, sir. And other valuable intelligence information.
Yes. And were the things that he gave you, the items that he gave you, could you just go down to the road in Roebuck Street and get them in a store?
No, you couldn't.
There's no Roebuck Street?
Robert Street,
Region.
I think you have them in Barbados too frequently, Mr. Pilgrim.
I see that he spends more time on the ground here.
Mr. Scotland, may I for clarification? Mr. Gates, for how long whilst you were a serving member in the Guyana Police Force did you deal with Brezhnev?
I would say for about 3 months.
Have you ever met with him in the company of other police officers who are known to you as police officers?
Chichester.
That's the only one.
Yes, sir.
And you all had a tripartite meeting? Meeting or meetings?
Meetings.
Meetings.
Yes, sir.
And following from that, did this person who described himself as Brezhnev and as a member or former member of the KGB, did he know you were a police officer?
Yes, he
Carried
knew.
out undercover work?
Yeah, he had a lot of information that I never knew he had.
And when he was assisting you, did he know that he was assisting you to carry out work on behalf of the Guyana Police Force?
Yes, he knew.
You told him this?
He had information prior to me meeting him, so he told me what my regulation number was and stuff like that. So I knew that he was advised or informed by my superiors.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, but no, the question asked by Madam Commissioner is as follows. Did he know that he was assisting you as a member of the Guyana Police Force in conducting your infiltration duties?
Yes, he did.
And this was clearly communicated between the parties.
Yes, sir.
And just to take one question away from Mr. Williams, you were asked by the commission, well, how many members of the police force you would have met whilst meeting Brezhnev? Was that an operation where you all would have met in the middle of the street and have the whole police force with you?
No, sir. Of course not.
Or was the modus operandi to be more secretive?
Yeah, we operated strictly on a need-to-know basis.
Thank you.
Mr. Scotland, one shot from Mr. Williams' armory is, as we say, de minimis.
Thank you very
He
much.
has much more to come.
Well, I will... Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Sir, may I continue? Don't be distracted, okay?
I am surely not.
All right. No foreboding will befall you. Now, the police service of Guyana, according to you, in conjunction with this former KGB agent Brezhnev sometime in November 1979 sought to conspire with you to literally assassinate Dr. Rupnarayan.
That's right.
And for clarity, this is contained at page 3 of your evidence in chief, but I'm just going it over in a direct way, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it would be true to say that apart from the technical assistance that this person brought to you, the police service in its formal capacity, along with this informal agent, was involved in assassination of persons, citizens of Guyana, or at least conspiracy.
That's true.
Well, one that you gave him, though, was the attempt.
Well, he didn't.
Dr. Rupnarayan was the attempt, an attempt. But you conclude from that,
No, I'm not general. Mr. Chairman, I'm with you.
the instance you gave was an attempt only.
It was he didn't attempt it, he aborted it. He didn't actually start it, but there was a conspiracy.
A conspiracy might have fell short of an attempt, but you conclude from that that they were involved in assassinating. Be careful, be careful. You see, you're rushing ahead saying, it is therefore true to say, and I'm not so sure always about your premises. That's what I'm trying to hit you.
That's,
Thank
Mr. Chairman, what you call a quantum leap.
Mr.
Sometimes
Chairman,
they say a leap into darkness.
Kind of non-secretary, see, be careful.
Mr. Chairman, I will take your cue. I'm watching the time. Sir, we will be a little, we'll go through the steps. With respect to Dr. Rupnarayan and the assignment you were given for his demise, you declined the assignment, isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
But had you followed through with it, that would have led to the assassination of Dr. Rupnarayan.
Sure it would.
So in the circumstances, would it not be true to say that apart from the conspiracy, once there was a willing operative, in this case you, that would have now crystallized into a real attempt to assassinate?
I do agree.
You do or you don't?
I do agree.
You do agree. And this,
But Mr. Scotland, there's some element of speculation.
But the last question fell short of agreeing that it would have resulted in assassination. He said it would have resulted in an attempt.
all right.
You
So-
see, he told us that the bullets would explode and so on,
Yes.
and when he fired the first few shots, he must hand the gun to Dr. Rupnarayan, step back, and it will explode. But before he had any opportunity of even testing, he aborted the mission, threw them in the Berbice River, and abandoned that sort of mission. So you're asking him to speculate as to whether or not, had he carried through, those bullets would have in fact exploded and had the potential to kill Dr.
I
Rupnarayan.
will reboot the question.
No, but I don't
Precisely.
think you need to spend any more time on that, because in any event, it did not happen that he was assassinated.
But
So
Mr.
that the result now is only speculation as to whether if even he had gone through, it would have resulted in assassination. It might have.
May
But
I
it
be
might not.
allowed one final
Yeah, but I
question
don't
at this
think we
point?
should spend any more time on that,
May I
because
be
the
allowed?
reality is that it did not happen. Everything else is speculative as to whether it would have happened.
May I be allowed one question on that point before I move on?
No,
So-
how far it will carry us, but go ahead.
When you received your assignment relative to Dr. Rupnarayan from Brezhnev, did you understand that assignment to mean that you were then chosen to assassinate Dr. Rupnarayan by the means given?
That's my understanding.
I
No,
move
but I
on.
don't know how far that helps us, because there are a lot of failed assassination attempts. I understand his mission, but that doesn't mean it would have been successful.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I don't beat it too much, you know.
I have stopped.
Very well.
The horse is dead. Now, apart from the assignment, is it true, sir, that you were offered the equivalent of, is it 1 million Guyanese?
$1 million.
Let me say this though, Mr. Coxon, because you're going over a lot of ground that is already before. And, you know, we all have to be concerned about time. You're going over ground that is already covered. And you're not proceeding on it as being on the record. You are asking him now to repeat what he's already said. You're not saying we have already a record X. Following from that, can you answer this question? You are asking him to reestablish again the premise.
Mr. Chairman, I understand what you're saying. There is a promise, a method in my madness, but I will take the cue and I will try to be as short as possible with the remaining of my
I
question.
don't want to be rushing you, but explore a new ground if you can, or on the basis of the existing ground, get some inferences out, which I think is what you want to get.
That is what I'm attempting to do with respect to Donald Rodney. I will.
But don't do it by going back over what is already on record.
Yes, Mr.
Very
Chairman.
well.
Tell us now about the Ghana Defense Force. After you met Gregory Smith, we had established that he said that he was a serving member.
Yes, sir.
And he also, according to you, was being advised by the KGB operative called Brezhnev.
Yes, sir. That's what he said.
And also he was instructed to infiltrate the WPA as a member of the GDF.
Yes, that's what was told to me.
But he was to do that as a radio communication technician.
Yes, sir.
And it is true, sir, that according to your interaction with Gregory Smith, that he was in constant contact with retired Major General McLean and Laurie Lewis.
That's what he said to me.
Specifically, I want to take you to that conversation that you would have had with him in March 1980.
Bear in mind the evidence already on record where Mr. McLean, who gave evidence, is denying him.
I know.
Go a little slowly. Let the record speak clearly. Remember that he is being denied
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
by Mr. McLean. So don't go too fast. Let the record speak clearly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So we have established that you had a specific meeting with Gregory Smith sometime in March 1980 where he unearthed a plan to you.
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me, and this is where now we tie in what I've been asking you before, that the plan he unearthed to you was a plan similar to that they tried to get you involved with Dr. Rupnarain.
It was similar.
Yes. Nowhere in that plan was Donald Rodney supposed to be involved. His name was not called.
No, sir.
No. And the similarities between those two plans were very striking.
I would say so.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, this is important. I don't want to run the risk of your wrath. This is important to the comparator. One plan was not crystallized. In our view, one plan was.
So far you're in parables that
No, I'm not. I'll continue. Sir, the similarities of the plans were as follows. Serving members of the security services were being utilized as agents to carry out an assassination. Isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
Devices were to be used.
Yes, sir.
When the act was completed, there would be no recognition, there was supposed to be no recognition of the person who was assassinated.
Yes, sir.
You all were then supposed, both operatives were supposed to be removed from the scene thereafter.
Yes, sir.
Both operatives were to be paid substantial sums of money
Yes,
for
sir.
their act.
Yes, sir.
And both had as the common denominator the same consultant, Brezhnev.
Yes, sir.
So let's now, having established the similarities, go directly to this conversation of March 1980. As far as you tell this commission, it would be that Dr. Rodney had asked Mr. Gregory Smith to make a long-range communication set.
Before you get to that,
Yes, Mr.
just one of the elements that you just extracted. There was supposed to be no evidence of the persons assassinated.
Yes.
Those bodies were supposed to be done what with the birth.
When the event took place, it would mean that the persons who were assassinated would be not recognizable, isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
And in the case of the one that you were assigned to, Dr. Rupnarayan, when he put the gun and it explode, his face will mash up.
Yes, sir.
And you'll be whisked away in the dark.
Yes, sir.
Pardon me? Now, let us go back. I'm taking you back to this conversation of March. You tell us that the device that Gregory Smith was asked to make, to manufacture, was a long-range communication set.
Yes, sir.
In other words, something that would allow Dr. Rodney to speak to persons 20 to 25 miles away.
Yes, sir.
And around March, or let's say, because I see in your statement you said it could have been the conversation you had, or the request could have been before. So let's say that the request was made sometime in February 1980. Gregory Smith said, look, this would take some time for me to produce, isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
Would you then say, and the exact words you said that Smith told you, he said to Dr. Rodney, is it would take some time. Would you then say some time if you translate from March to June 1980? That would be sufficient time to elapse to create such a set?
Yes, sir.
So I now take you to the events of June 1980. When, according to the evidence of Assistant Superintendent Kendall, Mr. Chairman, that evidence is contained in it may very well be ARG 4. Let me see if I'm sure I marked it. ARG 4, and it will be at page 10 of ARG 4. It's actually number 10 at the top. Could ARG 4 is the last document we tendered. Could
You're referring to the trial transcript?
the trial transcript of Donald Rodney under the heading Assistant Superintendent Kendall is evidence in chief. Sir, it is page 10 and it will be lines 3 counting from the bottom. Come, sir. Right. Let him see from. Right. I was present when. Sir, a piece of nickel. Yes. Does the commission have it? Sir, could you read from lines 3 where Assistant Superintendent Kendall, hold on, before you start. You see at the top of the page where I am Assistant Superintendent of Police stationed at Criminal Investigation Department.
Yes, sir.
And could you read what time, read into the record what time Assistant Superintendent Kendall is speaking about when he arrived at the scene?
About 8:45 p.m.
On which day? Read the
13th
whole
June,
sentence.
on Friday, 13th June 1980, about 8:45 p.m.
He went to John
I
Street.
went to John Street between Hatfield Street. I went there at the invitation of police emergency. I saw a car in John Street on the western side of the road.
Yes.
The number was PBB 2349. It was white in color and faced the north.
Good. So Assistant Superintendent Kendall arrives at the scene, and you would know that that is the scene where the explosion that caused the death of Dr. Rodney occurred, correct?
Yes, sir.
Read now lines 3 from the bottom. I was present when, lines 3 counting from the bottom. I was present when the car
I
was
was present
removed.
when the car when the car was removed.
Yes,
There was a set of several pieces of nickel, cadmium batteries.
yes.
There were several whole ones and also several pieces.
Keep going.
There
Yeah.
are also a cylinder, freezers, and 2 small pieces of mold, and a small electric coil, and small pieces of metal.
Good. So, Officer Kendall is speaking about the items that he recovered soon after the explosion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let me take you back in time now. The conversation you had with Gregory Smith in March 1980, that's the last time you saw him.
Yes, sir.
Did he not tell you that according to him, that Laurie Lewis and former retired Major General McLean indicated that the long-range communication device that he was to make for Dr. Rodney was supposed to cause his demise?
Yes, sir.
You tried to dissuade him from being part of that.
I did.
When, having now read that record of the evidence at the trial of Donald Rodney, does it bear any stark resemblance to what Gregory Smith told you in March 1980?
Surely does.
Let me take you through each step by step. Having now read the evidence that I've read for you now, that you have read over, the official transcript on the record, does it not accord with the device that Gregory Smith said he was asked to make by Dr. Rodney, the communication device?
Yes, it points in that direction.
And with the evidence of the explosion, does it not accord with the way in which, according to Gregory Smith, Laurie Lewis and Mr. McLean said that Dr. Rodney is to meet his demise?
It all points in that direction.
Doesn't the time frame between March and it will take a little time, meaning June, accord with the time effluxing for the making of those 2 devices?
Yes,
or
sir.
the making of the device, sorry?
Yes, it all points in that direction.
Doesn't the items that Brezhnev gave you to plant in the car and the offices of the conference room of the WPA, doesn't those 2 devices and the remnants recovered by Officer Kendall seem similar to each other in some way?
Surely does.
That it relates to electronics,
Yes.
in
from
which
that-
Brezhnev was an advisor?
Yes, sir.
In any of that
Is he
scenario?
answering things that you don't know about, though? You were able to see the elements that constituted the device in relation to Rodney. At least we know what were those elements contained at pages 10 and 11 of the record before the magistrate's court. Pieces of metal,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
small electric coil, cylinder, processors, and 2 small pieces of mold, etc.
Miss,
But,
sir,
but what he planted in Lorraine Scar never exploded.
I understand, Mr.
So
Chairman.
he don't know the elements of that, now he don't know the elements of the other one that was planted at his house or his office.
Mr. Chairman, they
But
may
you
not.
are suggesting to him, and he's going along with you, that he knew the elements of all of them, and then they never exploded.
Mr. Chairman, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting the similarities and the modus operandi.
Yeah, but the similarities would only be on the surface. It look alike. But you went on and got the details of what constituted one of them,
Yes.
because that exploded. And
Yes,
the
Mr.
evidence came out in the magistrate's court as to what was found at the scene. But the one that was planted in Lorraine Scar never exploded, nor the one at the office.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm concerned with the relationship between the premises you're putting and the conclusions you're drawing, and the witnesses going ahead with you, when in truth of the fact, there is no sufficient basis for his going ahead with you.
well, Mr. Chairman, I say 2 things. I am giving the witness the opportunity to give his evidence. That's one.
Yeah, but I don't think that you're doing it fairly, because
Well-
it does not logically follow what you are putting to him.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know how else I can do it. I'm not putting words in his mouth. I'm asking him the questions, and I'm asking him for the similarities.
Well, the conclusions you're suggesting don't follow from the premises that you've established.
Mr. Chairman, I will be guided, and I will.
No, you must guide yourself here, not me guide you. You must guide yourself.
Well,
It's a question of reasoning and what naturally follows. I can't be in your head all the time, so say, no, don't do that, don't follow. You want me to guide you, you must guide yourself. What you're putting to him does not fairly and reasonably follow.
Mr.
You
Chairman,
understand what I'm saying? Try your best, man, try your best.
I will try my best, Mr. Chairman. Sir, let me see, maybe it is me, and I'm not being as pellucid as I ought to be. I understand that you did not see the items that were recovered on the night of the 13th of June. You accept that?
Yes, sir.
But I do understand that you did see the items given to you to plant on the car of Dr. Rupnarayan, correct?
Yes, sir.
I understand that you were not there on the night of the 13th of June, 1980.
Yes, sir.
That is why, in all fairness to you and the commission, I read what was recovered on the night, correct?
Yes, sir.
Having read what was recovered on the night, having seen the items presented to you to put on under Dr. Rupnarayan's car and in the headquarters of the WPA, you understand my question?
Yes, sir.
I understand also that nothing exploded at the WPA headquarters, yes?
Yes, sir.
Having now described those items to you and the ones that you would have been given by Brezhnev, do you find any similarities?
I will say, based on the sequence of events,
In fact, the witness is clueless.
He is?
He has to be, because the premises put to him do not admit of that.
It's chalk to cheese.
All that he can speak about is in relation to 2 items that were given to him. One to plant in Dr. Rupnarayan's car, and the other one to plant in his office. All that he can tell us is they look alike. Beyond that, he cannot go. He never saw the one that was used by Smith in relation to Rodney, and he did not see what came out of it, what constituted it, except that he saw the evidence. But that doesn't allow him to compare and contrast with anything else, because he does not know what constituted the 2 that he saw. So you are confusing yourself and confusing the witness too, with deep respect.
Mr. Chairman, I am not in the habit of arguing with the chair on my points.
No, but
But-
if the chair is wrong in reason, then
Well-
correct the chair.
Well, Mr. Chairman, may I take this approach, and I take it with the greatest of respect to the chair and its wealth of knowledge. May I be allowed to ask my questions, elicit the answers, and make my submissions, and the chair and the commission, in its wisdom and sober retirement, make its ruling, please.
Yes, but we have to be concerned with what is fair to the witness. If you put in false premises to the witness, it's not fair to the witness, and the commissioners have a duty to intervene to say, no, that is not fair. Also, the conclusions you're drawing from the premises you're presented may be misleading to the public. I don't think they'll mislead us, but they will be misleading to the public.
Well,
So I think you have a duty. You owe it to the commission, to the witness, to be fair. The conclusions must flow logically and reasonably from the premises you have established.
Mr. Chairman, I will try my best to be as fair as I can.
I
May-
thought I was pointing you in the direction of the weaknesses
I-
of what
I-
you were doing, but you're not taking me on, so you go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
I am fair. You go ahead.
Mr. Scotland, hold 1 minute. When you ask him about the similarities of the devices, he spoke to the events. Now, Mr. Gates, look at what Mr. Scotland read, or you read rather, pages 10 to 11. Is there any item or items there which, in your view, is or are similar to the two devices you were given?
No, I don't think so. That's why I said I can only say in relation to the sequence of events.
You can't speak to it. That's the point I was making. Because you were only given items. You didn't know what constitute the items.
Mr. Chairman, I
You could
agree,
say they look alike. They look alike.
but I am not speaking about the items. I am actually going relative to the sequence of events and the modus operandi.
Yeah, but there was only one of the items that exploded. So, and he knows now from the evidence given at court what constituted the items of the bomb that exploded. But none of the two other items exploded.
Mr.
So he
Chair-
has nothing to compare and contrast it with.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that, but in all fairness to me, and it's the third time you've told me I'm being unfair, it could not be that the modus operandi related to Dr. Rupnarine could have been an item that exploded with Dr. Rodney, for the simple reason Dr. Rupnarine was supposed to be firing a shot, and the shot was supposed to ricochet, as opposed to on the 13th
You're
of
correcting
June.
yourself.
Pardon?
You're correcting yourself. then.
No, Mr. Chairman, I was always on that line. What I am asking about is the similarities in the modus operandi, not the items that exploded. So maybe, and it really is my fault, and I am thick between the ears sometimes. So I take full blame for not being as clear as I should. But the point I'm trying to get out, Mr. Chairman, with respect, is the similarities in the modus operandi, and then, and I will show my hand, the charging of Donald Rodney where he was just not involved.
But I thought that the modus operandi included the manner in which the shot was to go off. The one with Dr. Rupnarine was different from the one with Rodney, different from the one that was put in the car.
I've already established the similarities in the modus operandi, and in establishing that, I never said that they were both supposed to go off in the same way. And I've been fair to the witness. I went through the similarities, and he agreed.
You get ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And, you know, I think you have covered it. I think the witness has indicated that the furthest he could go in this respect is that there were both electronic devices and there was some similarity in terms of looks, but I don't think you can take it any further.
And
So
I don't wish to take it
perhaps
any further.
We could find any other similarities in other respects. If there are none, we could
And
move
I
on.
don't wish to take it any further. But I do wish to persevere, though. Right. So pressing on. In your mind, bearing in mind what you know, you are aware, and I've given you ARG3, which was put in through you, that Donald Rodney was charged with the possession of explosive without lawful authority. by Leslie Stafford.
Yes, sir.
In light of your interaction with Gregory Smith and what transpired on the 13th of June, 1980, was Donald Rodney in any way involved?
Not to my knowledge.
And for the sake of being deemed unfair, would that be the first time that the powers that be in Guyana would have charged somebody as a scapegoat? Speak from your own angle of analysis.
As far as I can recall, I can't recall any other political figure.
Pardon me?
I can't recall any other political figure being subjected to that kind of charges.
But this incident would have been a significant incident, isn't that so?
Yes, it would.
And
Was Donald Rodney regarded as a political figure?
Mr. Chairman, I'm coming to that. Was he regarded as a he wasn't, was he? He was just a brother.
No, he was the brother of a political figure.
But he was a civilian, isn't that so?
Yes, sir.
And would it be the first time then that a civilian is charged with a trump-up charge to cover up?
No.
Now, Skip Roberts, in 1980, he was the Deputy Commissioner of Police.
Yes, sir.
Ahead of him would have been the Commissioner.
Yeah, but he never reported to the commissioner.
He reported, according to you, directly to the then Prime Minister, according to you.
Yeah, and that was public knowledge.
What do you mean by, tell us.
Everyone in the force at the time knew that.
You knew that?
Yes, I knew that.
Well, speak of your knowledge. Don't say public knowledge.
What is that you knew, Mr. Gate?
Pardon me?
What is that you're saying is public knowledge?
Everybody knew that Skip Roberts never reported to Lightbarker. Well, you now know.
You mean everybody within the police force, sir? Or
Pardon?
with the general public, or everyone in the
Well,
police force?
there are lots of members of the public who knew that.
But you were speaking for the police force a while ago, because you said everybody in the police force knew that.
Yeah, everybody in the police force knew that, who worked under Skip Roberts.
Okay. No, well, sir, let's be fair. When you say it was public knowledge and everybody, now speak of your knowledge.
Okay,
Did you know that?
I knew that.
Tell us, how did you come by that knowledge?
Because there was an incident.
Yes, tell us.
One night we were on patrol, and we went upstairs to a place named Car Wash. And former Commissioner Barker's niece was sitting on the steps. An
Yes.
agent and a number of other policemen, they beat her with an axe handle, caused her actual bodily harm.
No, you've lost your clarity there. I don't think you're opening your mouth as you should.
You're losing us in translation. Start over.
She was beaten, causing actual bodily harm.
Yes?
The next morning, all of us that was on that exercise was summoned to the office of the then Commissioner of Police, Mr. Lightbarker.
Yes?
When Mr. Barker inquired from Sergeant Andrews, known as Agent, why he assaulted the woman and why he allowed the other members of the party to do so. Agent sucked his teeth and barged out of his office. Mr. Barker's word were, you see, y'all bars don't report to me. He's report directly to the President or Mr. Burnham. Everybody knew that in that time, that unit came specially under Mr. Roberts, and we knew that he never took instructions from. That particular incident confirmed it. What also confirmed it is when my mother sought his assistance in something that Skip Roberts and Larry Lewis were involved in. When the commission said he can't do anything. It is public knowledge that Skip Roberts used to ride alongside Mr. Barnum on a horseback.
On a what?
On
Beg your pardon?
horseback.
You saw them riding
Many times.
together on horseback?
Yeah. At Hope Estate.
Which estate?
Hope Estate.
Hope Estate. Now, let us, I'm on, as you're talking about horse, I'm on the home stretch with you. You spoke of Gregory Smith recounting to you the meetings that he had with two functionaries in the security forces in Guyana, Norman McLean and Laurie Lewis.
Yes, sir.
It would be true to say at that time, 1979, 1980, that Norman McLean being the chief of defense and Laurie Lewis being, he was the commissioner of police then, was he?
Who's that?
Laurie Lewis, what was he?
His rank was deputy commissioner.
He was deputy commissioner. And also Skip Roberts, that these were persons high up in the security service of Guyana.
Yes, sir.
And according to your evidence, it is true to say that those two persons would have given Gregory Smith a directive as it related to Dr. Rodney.
Yes, sir.
And according to you, that was to bring about his demise.
Yes, sir.
And just for the record and to be fair, didn't his demise come about?
It did.
Chairman, commissioners, may I just consult with my notes to make sure that I've covered all the areas that I need to cover?
And may I draw your attention to the paragraph 4 of the terms of reference, because to examine and report on the actions and activities of the state, such as the Guyana Police Force. I think you've dealt with that. The Guyana Defense Force. I think you have to. But what about the other two, the Guyana National Service and the Guyana People's Militia? Is there anything within your knowledge there, consistent with your brief, that may help us with the two of those institutions?
I will press on.
Perhaps the witness can.
I take the cue and I'm grateful. The Guyana National Service, and just tell us in about 2 to 3 lines, how did that feature in the security structure of national security? The National Service and People's Militia.
I have no knowledge of the Guyana National Service.
So you cannot say any role that they would have played between 1978 and 1980. Yes?
No, I can't. I don't have any.
But the Guyana People's Militia, is it not true that before his ascendancy to the GDF, that Mr. McLean was in charge of the, is it not the people's?
No, Mr. McLean was in charge of the militia. The militia, I think
Which was he in charge of? Let me just,
the
Guyana
Guyana
National
Service.
Service. Mr.
it was the Guyana National Service. So, you know then, for a fact, that Mr. McLean used to be the head of the Guyana National Service.
And subsequently the Guyana Defense Force.
And he was brought in from the Guyana National Service directly as head of the GDF, the Guyana Defense Force.
Yes, sir.
And that's all you can tell us about the Guyana National Service.
Yes, sir.
What about the Guyana People's Militia?
I have no knowledge of their operations.
All right. Now, the chairman has rightly pointed out to me that the terms also goes, terms of reference, and those who were in command and superintendent of these agencies. You see that? Well, could you read? Could you take it? Good. It would be true to say that, and let's go through the operatives. Cecil Skip Roberts, he would have either been in command or superintendent in the police service, yes?
Yes, sir.
And,
Either or,
pardon?
why either or?
Well, you tell us, was it and or? Was he in command and superintendent, as far as you know?
Well, he was the Deputy Commissioner of Law Enforcement.
And what do you understand his role as Deputy Commissioner, Law Enforcement to mean?
Well, he was in charge of the crime-fighting arm of the Guyana Police Force.
And he being the person who you said, remember you said he took up a red phone and he had a certain conversation?
Yes, sir.
Skip Roberts, you would say, was someone whose role was instrumental in monitoring the operations of forces that the powers that be deemed inimical to the interests of their continuance.
Got it over again, sir.
Skip Roberts, his role, would you say, was an important role in monitoring, infiltrating forces who were considered to be inimical to the interests of the ruling party?
Yes, sir.
But is that monitoring infiltrating or monitoring the infiltrators?
What was it, monitoring
Monitoring,
the infiltrators, or
infiltrating.
monitoring and having persons infiltrate?
Yes, sir.
And his role, according to you, and the terms of reference number 4, continued even after the death of Dr. Rodney in June 1980.
Yes, sir.
I lost that, I was distracted, I'm sorry.
His role continued even after the death of Dr. Rodney in June 1980. Your answer was yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And would have continued even to December 31st, 1980.
Yes, sir.
Let us look at the role of Laurie Lewis.
Now, before you go there,
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
I missed something in my notes. His role was important in monitoring and infiltrating persons, monitoring, go ahead from there.
Yes.
What was it? He said that his role was important, he started with Skip Roberts, in monitoring
And organizing the infiltration of groups inimical or seen or deemed to be inimical to the interests of the government of the day.
Yes, sir.
And this role that I've just described continued up to the 31st of December 1980.
Yes, sir.
So much so that when you were kept for the 30 days, tell me something about the 30 days that you were kept incarcerated. Were you told of the reason for your incarceration?
Well, after I refused to,
Were you told, we are the 11th hour, were you told we are arresting you for this reason? Were you told of that?
no, not until I was being interrogated.
Were you advised of your rights to retain an attorney or someone of your choosing to represent you?
I don't think you had rights in those days
No, but
to ask.
were you at any time given a charge? You were kept for 30 days. Were you ever charged after the 30
No,
days?
sir. No, sir.
Were you ever given a document that authorized your detention?
No, sir.
Are you telling this Commission of Inquiry, be careful in your hand, well, be true to your oath, that, you know the phrase, just so, out of the blue, someone could be taken up and kept for 30 days in Guyana in 1980 without any official documentation, without any official charge?
Yes, it happened during that period.
And you would say that Skip Roberts was the person who you met at CID headquarters when you were released from that detention.
Yes, sir.
Let us go to Laurie Lewis.
So he never appeared before a court.
Did you ever appear before a judge, a magistrate, a justice of the peace?
No, sir.
But did he ever seek to secure his freedom while he was there?
Whilst you were kept there for the 30 days, did you ever seek a habeas corpus, a writ, anything to secure your freedom?
Nobody knew where I was.
No, well, you cannot say.
Because
if
my mother
what
was
anybody
running from...
knew. Were you, let me elicit it fairly from you. Were you in contact with anyone?
No, sir.
Was
No
an-
phone calls.
Was anyone allowed to see you?
No, sir.
So how then did your mother get to know of your incarceration?
Because she was there when they picked me up in the morning. I was picked up from home.
So she saw when they picked you up.
Yeah, a party of about 25 to 30 ranks from TSU headed by Sergeant Andrews, known as Agent.
Now, you already spoke of Sergeant Andrews, and I don't wish to go there. So during that period, were you allowed to make a phone call, anything at all?
No, sir.
You said that you were blindfolded at some point in time. During that 30 days of your incarceration, were you fed?
Very well. Very well fed from Watercrest, I understand.
From?
Watercrest restaurant. That's where I was told the food came from.
All right. And were you allowed, apart from your interrogators, were you allowed to communicate with anyone else?
No, sir.
And during that 30-day period, how many interrogation sessions did you have?
I would say about 20 per day. Between the night and day period.
20. All right. Can I? Were you in solitary confinement? Were you kept with others?
No, I was the only person in the cell.
Again, it could be me. Where were you?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I've lost something, but are we going over this again?
Excuse me?
This witness has given us evidence about his 30 days incarceration already.
Mr. Chairman, I've read over the transcript.
I think
3
that
times.
he's adding now,
I've not seen he was interrogated 20 times, nowhere.
he did give the bare evidence,
Yeah.
but that he was in solitary, that he was not permitted any contact with anyone. So these are additional new points.
Yeah, but don't forget, my original objection is that it doesn't assist us in the terms of reference. This doesn't assist you in determining how Dr. Rodney met his death in an explosion.
But the
This is way after the event anyway.
Mr. Chairman, the terms of reference,
the terms of reference extend beyond the death of Rodney.
Yes, but it
One.
must relate back to it.
Yes, but
There's no causation, there's no nexus.
no, but remember the atmosphere prevailing at the time, which extended it beyond Rodney's death. This is part of it.
Mr. Chairman, this goes directly to your terms of reference as it relates to the period 1st January 78 to 31st December 1980. Mr. Chair, I really don't wish to engage in crosstalk. May I continue on to Laurie Lewis now, please? Let's go to Laurie
You
Lewis.
have that prohibition on yourself, not only in relation to the chair, but in relation to fellow council as well.
The only thing about that, Mr. Chairman, is I will only take your prohibition and maybe Mr. Pilgrim's, no one else's. May I continue? Laurie Lewis, he was deputy commissioner, yes, you said?
Yes, sir.
Just below the commissioner.
Yes, sir.
And his role, you have already alluded to it, was instructive as in giving instructions to Gregory Smith as
Yes,
it
sir.
relates to the demise of political opponents.
Yes, sir.
It'd be true to say, sir, that he was, as someone in command and superintendence of the police force in Guyana between 79 and 1980.
Yeah, and joint service
And
intelligence.
joint Joint service intelligence involves both the police and the army.
Well, I won't say he had control over the army, but the army would, from time to time, I understand, supply him with whatever intelligence they have gathered.
Mr. Chairman, there's a document to tie the scene that I need. I have it. You know that there is the Guyana Defense Act, which establishes. Mr. Chairman, would you permit me a minute to get national security? Is it here or is it the Constitution? I'm looking.
Are you thinking about a 60-second minute or
What?
60-second minute?
Yes. Yes, when he said it. Let me not waste time until I get it. Lori Lewis also worked in close collaboration with Cecil Skip Roberts,
Yes, sir.
and they would have worked in close collaboration with Mr. Retired Major General McLean,
Yes, sir.
and they would have reported to the head of national security, which at the time was the Honorable Prime Minister Forbes L.S. Burnham.
Yes, sir.
There is a security council that was established statutorily, meaning by statute, of which the then Prime Minister was the head.
I don't know much about that council itself.
All right. Okay, that's not the one. Okay, cool. Now, tell us more, finally, did you ever meet retired Major General McLean during your tenure in the police?
No, I've seen him around. I've never met him
You never met him officially?
personally. Yeah.
And Leslie Stafford, the person who charged Donald Rodney, did you ever interact with him?
Yes, sir.
Would it not be true to say that he was, as far as my information reveals, a sort of protege of Cecil Skip Roberts?
Yeah, he was one of his henchmen, if you
Well,
want.
I would, no, I use a neutral word. He was one of his right-hand men, isn't that so?
Yeah, one of the soldiers, put it that way.
To whom are you referring?
Leslie Stafford, Detective Constable number 8275. He was one of his, well, you say henchmen, I say right-hand men, yes?
Yeah, okay, I'll accept that.
It would be true to say that he was one of the persons, along with Sergeant Andrews, who would do the bidding of Cecil Skip Roberts.
That's true.
And he's one of the persons with whom Cecil Skip Roberts entrusted a lot of extraordinary duties.
Yeah, that's clear. That was clear at the time.
Could you tell us, as far as you knew, what were some of the extraordinary duties, or what were some of the things that Leslie Stafford would have done at the behest of Cecil Skip Roberts?
Well,
that you know. If you don't know, be fair and say I don't know.
he was more or less involved in criminal investigations. I never walked along closely with him.
You never worked with him?
No. I can speak of Sergeant Andrews. I never.
And it's true to say that Leslie Stafford, as time developed, was one of the hand-picked men of Cecil Skip Roberts.
Yes, that's a fact.
Mr. Chairman,
How far did he get in the force?
I'm coming there. As far as you know,
I think the last time I saw him, he was a sergeant. I don't know.
a sergeant, did he get a superintendent salary?
No, I think he left the country.
He left the country.
The last time you saw him
He was a,
Said he was a sergeant.
Sergeant,
What way? What year?
sometime in 92, sometime around that.
security comes.
Do you see if they've got any meteoric rise for this henchmanship?
Do you think that his rise was meteor? No, it's Mr. Chairman, it's not a laughing question. What is joke for some is serious for others.
How you,
I find it's a serious question. Was his rise meteoric?
I would say so. I would go further to say that Ignatius McCrae was the brother-in-law of Skip Roberts. He also featured in that investigation.
no, you
You
lost
serious?
me now.
I am
Ignatius McCrae
was
was,
the
hold on.
brother-in-law of Skip Roberts. You can check that out.
No, I don't want it. I take your word as given. So Ignatius McCrae, who was a leading witness in the case against Donald Rodney, was the,
Brother-in-law of Skip Roberts.
tell us, who married who to form that brother-in-law relationship? Hey, that's important. Don't call names, just who married who, says both, it's important.
One married the other sister.
One married the other sister. Keep groaning. No,
Are you trying to draw an inference from that he will be less than professional in the discharge of his obligation?
no, Mr. Chairman, I may not want to draw that. I don't think that in fairness, that I have nothing to form a substrata for that, but I can say, if the witness says so, that's a fact.
But the witness volunteered it, you didn't even ask.
I did-
So he must probably have a reason
I'm
why he has
going-
volunteered this information.
I was just wanted to show that the investigations could have been compromised.
So because you're the brother-in-law, you might do unprofessional things?
Yes, sir.
Well, tell me, was there a dearth in
Not your
officers?
father in my books, but...
Mr. Chairman, I agree, don't label it on me, the witnesses volunteered.
Yes, and I'm...
But may I probe?
Yes, you may.
Was there a dearth in officers that only those two officers could have investigated this matter? Or were there other officers who were capable?
There were other officers who were capable, but I think it was assigned to. Because my officer, Inspector London, he was very able and capable, but then he was bypassed.
Wasn't there the name, I read the name, Mr. Gentle, was he a good officer?
Yeah, he was a good investigator.
So in the trial of Donald Rodney, there were about 4 to 5 police officers, and out of the 4 or the 5, 2 of them are related to each other.
Yes.
Well, 3 of them, because the main man driving the investigation is related to Ignatius McCrae. Yes?
Yes, sir.
The third was the
Skip
henchman.
Robertson. I will say Stafford was related. Related in what way?
But McCrae was related to Skip
Roberts,
and your testimony is that Stafford was the henchman. Well,
yeah, it was one of his.
yes, of Cecil Skip Roberts.
Yeah,
That's your testimony. So tell us, would you say then that the agencies that particularly the Ghanaian police force, carried out their tasks of surveillance of political opposition with some efficiency?
I would say so.
Sometimes using unorthodox methodologies?
I would say so.
As far as you know as a police officer, was the planting of listening devices on the car of a member of an opposition party, was that legal in Guyana in 1979, 1980? Was that legal?
Not according to my knowledge.
So then you would say then that as part of their surveillance, the police force would have been engaged in illegal activities?
They were.
dealt with.
You restricted the opposition though. You've only been mentioned the WPA, but that was a minority opposition then.
And when we say when I say opposition, and rightly so, Mr. Chairman, I mean also political opposition, not just the opposition party, but political opposition. They would have been engaged in illegal activities as against the groups that were politically opposed.
Yes, and they also turned a blind eye to
They also,
they also turned a blind eye to the House of Israel whenever they attack the opposition parties whenever they have meetings. I was personally instructed to turn a blind eye.
so they were not only sometimes active, but the agencies were sometimes also purposefully inactive.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but what about the PPP? The PPP was the main opposition. But
I don't know if I can give an instance of one, of something that happened. There was a meeting in, I think it was early 1980, at the corners of Bar and Alexander Street in Kitty. That meeting was a joint meeting. The opposition parties formed themselves into something called Patriotic Coalition for Democracy.
in what?
Patriotic Coalition for
Let
Democracy.
me get some interruption here. Opposition formed themselves.
Into a grouping called the Patriotic Coalition for Democracy.
Yes.
They were having a meeting at the corners of Alexander and Bar Street, close to the Kitty Market.
Alexander and
Bar Street,
Bar.
Bar Street, B-A-R-R, in Kitty.
And what else? Who constituted this opposition?
The PPP, the WPA, and there was another grouping called Mr. Yasu Prasad was the head of that. Can't recall the name. But it was a number of opposition political parties.
Mr. Prasad?
Yasu Prasad, he was the leader of one of the grouping.
So is it fair to say PPP, WPA, and other groupings?
Other groupings.
Yes. And what happened?
I was bodyguarding Dr. Ruben Ryan at that meeting, which was attended by Walter Rodney and others. Mr. Moses Nagamutu. Mr. Moses Nagamutu was the speaker, and I was doing some crowd analysis. And when I looked across the road, I saw a party of men whom I recognized to be members of the House of Israel. One of the guys, I knew him as Bishop. He was from the Bishop family. That guy had a bottle in his hand, and he made a bowling action like this, and the bottle landed on Moses Nagamutu's head. It had formalin. There was pandemonium broke out. I was carrying 2 firearms at the time. I had to draw 2 weapons because rabbi men had bayonets, and they were advancing to cause physical harm or danger to the WPA, to the members of the PPP. And the very next day, I was pulled in and told that I should not have drawn my weapon on the rabbi people, you know. I was reprimanded. I can remember an inspector named Yankee Williams, who was in charge of the proceedings. That man, he arrested one of the persons with the bayonet. And the man was dismissed from the police force without pension and gratuity. You know? So there were many instances like that where you were told, at one time I was told to, so as not to be injured by any rabbi person or come into conflict with them. I was ordered to go to the House of Israel headquarters to meet with Rabbi and his team so that they can know me, you know, and I know that, well, I am one of them.
But who told you that?
Mr. Larry Lewis.
But What happened to Moses Nagamoto's head? I mean, this thing dropped on his head, what happened?
No, the formalin went into his eyes and somebody came and, but I was more concerned about the person I was protecting. Walter was very athletic. He jumped over a concrete fence and he disappeared into another street.
He was rightly regarded as a sprinter.
Yeah, he was a very good athlete. Yeah. But I'm just trying to tell you, this thing wasn't directed alone against WPA. The PVP also had a share. Mr. Moses Nagamoto cannot deny what I just said.
Before you speak about Mr. Moses,
He was from where?
He was, at the time, he was a PVP executive member.
could you tell us, sir, you say you pulled your firearm, you were pulled in and reprimanded. By whom?
By Mr. Larry Lewis. He told me I should have allowed the Rabbi people to do what they were, to do what they had intended to do.
You also mentioned that an inspector did something, but you...
An inspector named Yankee Williams, who was stationed at the Alberton Police Station, he was in charge of law and order on the ground. And because he unknowingly arrested one of these rabbi people, he never knew, apparently. He was dismissed. That's public knowledge.
You said without pension and gratuity.
He was dismissed without pension. I knew him well, so I can tell you. And he left the country.
Is he still alive?
He lives in America.
There's the Police Service Commission.
There was, but it was...
What was that?
There were police service commission, but then they had no real authority. They had to follow instructions.
Whose instructions?
I would say political directions. I can't say exactly from where, but I knew the police service commission is not like it is today. You had to be aligned to a certain political party before you could have been promoted.
These revolvers, these two firearms, sorry, that you say you were carrying, were they police issue?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
9mm and 6mm.
Was that usual for police officers to be given two sidearms
Well, like,
of similar caliber?
they are not similar. One was a 9 and one was a 6, equivalent to something like a 2.5.
No, I mean you were not carrying an SLR, like a rifle on the sidearm. You were carrying two sidearms.
Yeah, one was in a foot holster, the other one was here. So in the event I was attacked and I lose this one, could have always gone here for backup.
You were issued with these firearms before you were approached to do the double duty, I would call it, or? from
Yes,
the start?
I was issued one and I was given another one.
Very early, before your contact with Mr. Rutnarayan, before
Yes,
you
ma'am.
were recruited? Thanks.
You said you were given one. Were they official?
I signed for one, I didn't sign for the other.
But weren't you afraid that, given what you have described to us, that you could have been charged for being in possession of an illegal firearm?
I couldn't when I was still an active member of the force.
My fellow commissioner appears as though that is something unknown.
Well, I mean, you had to be compliant.
Even in today's world and everywhere.
I don't think any of the policemen would have had the, what should I say, the courage or to stop and search me at that time.
You were known as what, a butter?
No, many of them suspected that I was on an undercover assignment.
Oh. Your cover was blown then, man.
It would have blown.
Right, men around you suspect that?
Yeah, it would have been blown if I was arrested.
Very well.
So all efforts were made to ensure that it didn't happen.
And this meeting that you speak of was after your false release or before your false release?
After,
It was after? because you were then bodyguarding Dr. Rubner.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Council, I am thinking that this might be a convenient time to break. I would normally have gone a little longer, but I do have a meeting.
Okay.
You, you may need a few minutes tomorrow.
I'll be grateful for the indulgence,
Yes,
and I will be fair.
thank you, Council.
Yes,
So until tomorrow, we stand adjourned.